boys and girls. I am Mrs. Armstrong, and I teach elementary art at Sequoyah School in Claremore, Oklahoma. I am so glad you are here today to join me. If you're one of my earlier students, you know that whenever I dress up, then that means I'm going to be introducing a new artist. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to introduce an artist. We're going to kind of go over some of his skills, and then we're going to do a masterpiece. So since you're not in my classroom, then you don't have any clues around you. So I'm going to give you 3 clues at who I am. I am a French artist. I invented a new way of painting called Impressionist Art, and I loved painting nature. So think about those 3 hints. I'm French, Impressionist Art, and nature. If you guessed Claude Monet, you're correct. Claude Monet was born in 1840 in Paris, France, and he died in 1926 at the age of 86. When Claude was little, and he was around 5 years old, they moved to an area in France called Le Havre. And Le Havre was right along the Seine River where it meets the English Channel. So this is Le Havre right here. And they say that when Claude was small, growing up in this area, that if the sun was shining, he was always outside. He was running through the fields. He was climbing trees in the woods. He was fishing in the river or boating. And they think that because of growing up in this area, that is what has influenced a lot of his artwork. Let's look at 3 of Monet's types of paintings that he painted. Seascapes, landscapes, and of course, gardens. And if you look, they all have to do with nature. Monet had a very unique way of painting. And so the question that we're going to answer today is what made Monet's paintings different? We talk about this a lot in class, that if you want to become a famous artist, you have to do something totally different than any other artist has done. Because if you're copying someone else's and your paintings look just like theirs, then you're not going to get known. So Claude had to come up with a way of painting different. Well, if you think about the art that was before Claude Monet, it probably wasn't too difficult to come up with something different. We're going to look at a Leonardo da Vinci painting that you guys are familiar with, and it's called the Mona Lisa. And these earlier artists before Monet, they had to make their own paint. They would use minerals from the earth, they'd mix it with oils, and so a lot of their paint were earth tones. Their paintings were dark, they were serious, they had details, because of cameras back then. So if you wanted a portrait, if you wanted a picture of someone in your house, then it needed to look like that person. And so there was a lot of details. And most of the paintings before Monet painted indoors in their studio. Well, when we look at Monet's artwork and compare it to the paintings that were before him, the artwork that was before him, he didn't have a problem coming up with something totally different because he loved bright colors. He painted outdoors. He would carry his easel, his paint, and he would set up outside. He used very large brush strokes when he painted. Didn't have a lot of detail. When we look at some of the paintings on the next couple of slides, you'll see that their faces don't have a lot of detail. It looks like who they are, but if you look at it really close, you'll see those big brush strokes and how there's not a lot of detail. And his way of painting, he wanted to catch the sunlight in his paintings. And that did become difficult because the earth is moving. And so throughout the day, it looks like the sun is changing places. Well, if he was outside painting a certain area and then the sun is changing positions, the shadows are different. And so painting outside did become frustrating to Monet. So he would start a painting at a certain time of day, and then he would stop. And he'd go back outside the next day and start painting again because he wanted that sunlight in the same place. So sometimes he actually had more paintings going than just one. He might paint one in the morning, he might go start one in the afternoon, and he would kind of use that in the schedule. So this one is titled Impression Sunrise. This is where that Impressionist art actually took off, was because of this painting. This is how Monet envisioned that sunrise at that particular time on that day. And you can tell that day was kind of foggy. You can see the roundness of the sun. It's shining on the water. There's not any detail on the people in the boats. It's kind of a silhouette. And so the definition of Impressionist art says, Impressionist art is known for its distinctive brush strokes, the lighting, the colors, and the everyday subjects. And so because of this painting and him taking them to art shows, this is where that Impressionist art term started. Now, at the beginning, when Monet was taking some of his paintings to art shows, he got a lot of negative feedback. They said it was too blurry. They made fun of him and told him that it looked like he'd left it out in the rain because of the big brush strokes and not a lot of the detail. So it took a little while, but that didn't stop Monet from painting. He loved those bright colors. That was just his way of painting with the big brush strokes. And we're going to take a little bit closer look at that in just a minute. And he kept going, and it did take off. And then there were a lot of his art friends that kind of started painting in the same way. Down here, I have what impression means. It says it's the first effect of an experience upon the mind. And I think of that as how you feel at that moment when you see something. So this is how he felt that morning that he was watching that sunrise. And so when you look at some of Monet's paintings, he wants you to have a feeling about them that makes you happy, that it's not a serious painting. It's an everyday painting. And they're just wonderful paintings to look at. Okay, so let's look at how his big, large brush strokes worked. So Monet used a paint palette, and he would put his paints on his paint palette. Now, he was very poor, so he may have only been able to afford 3 colors. And if you have at least the primary colors, the red, the yellow, and the blue, then you can make all the other colors. So if he only started with those 3 colors, he would pick up those colors and he would begin to dab. He had like a dab technique, or those large brush strokes. And then if he picked up some yellow and he put that beside the blue, he would kind of dab those together. And yellow and red make orange. So he may not have had orange on his paint palette, but by the time that he got finished and he painted, you could see that orange color because your eyes kind of put those colors together. And so again, if you look at this painting of his wife Camille and their son Jean, did he use bright colors? He painted outdoors. He used large brush strokes, not a lot of detail if you look at their faces. Now, you can tell that this is Camille. You can tell that this is his son Jean. But if you look up really close, you can see that there's not a lot of detail. And again, catching the sunlight. So you can tell the sunlight was behind her because there's some shadowing in the front of her. Here are 4 more paintings of Monet. He loved his garden. He loved Japanese artwork, and he actually designed the bridge in his garden off of a Japanese bridge. Again, landscapes, some seascapes, and more of his gardens. Now, not only did Monet, the way that the sun changed throughout the day, and he had more than one painting going at one time, Monet would paint the same subject over and over and over, but he would paint them at different seasons. So I think this is the next one. This is his haystacks. So this is like the same haystack throughout the year, but it might be in the fall, it might be in the summer or the spring or the winter, and he would just paint the same thing over and over and over. Towards the end of his life, he had a series of his water lily paintings, and that was his last series that he did. And this is a variety of Monet's water lilies. And those are probably, to me, the most famous, that when you see a painting of Monet's water lilies, you'll know that that's a Monet painting. If you ever get the chance to get to a museum and see an original Monet, try to get up as close as possible to it and really look at those large brush strokes, because even though you're seeing this green, you're still going to see the yellow, you're going to see the blue, and then how it mixes in the middle to make that green. All right, so here is the color wheel that we're going to kind of review so that we can get started on our masterpiece. So this large triangle that's here in the center is representing the primary colors. So as long as you have red, yellow, and blue, then you're going to be able to make your secondary colors, which are your orange, your green, and your violet or your purple. And then if you want to go further with that, you can start mixing your secondary colors together. You can mix them with the primary colors, and then you're going to get your intermediate colors around the side. So we're going to move over here to the drawing board. Doesn't need to be any closer. All right. And for our masterpiece today, we're just going to do a simple vase with flowers, and we're going to try to create those colors from the color wheel. We're going to do a red one, and then we'll do the blue in the center of that, and those two will mix and make purple. And then we'll do our yellow, and then in the middle of that will be green, and then we're going to do our red and yellow, and the last one will be orange. We'll just do some simple steps on that, and I will help you come up with drawing your vase. Now, you're going to need a piece of paper and some crayons. We're going to modify this. If we were in my classroom, of course, we'd use paint, and we would mix those paints to make those secondary colors. But since you're at home, and I'm not for sure who all has paint at home, so if you will just grab your crayons, and let's get out the 3 primary colors. You're going to need to get out your red. I have them down here. You're going to need to get out your primary colors, your red, your blue, and your yellow. So get those ready. Now, since I am drawing up here, I am going to be drawing large so that you can see it. If you've got just a piece of white paper or notebook paper, either one will work. Let's stand them tall. So we're going portrait style. If you want to draw with the pencil, you can. If I drew with the pencil, you're not going to be able to see it. So I am actually going to draw with a marker, and I may change out my colors so that it'll be whatever color you're going to color with. So I'm going to draw the vase with black, and then on my flowers, I'm going to draw them the color that they're going to be. So that'll come and help you out. So if you want to come up with your own base, that's fine. Let's think about drawing the vase on the bottom half, and then the flowers will be on the top half. So draw large, don't draw too small. And I'm just kind of thinking about what that vase is that I brought to show. And let's kind of start in the middle of your paper. Let's do a little opening here at the top. Let's draw maybe coming in a little bit. And then let's do a kind of a rounded bottom. And close it at the bottom. And then later, if you want to put some designs on your vase, you can do that. The one that I showed you had a ribbon on it with a little flower hanging down. So we'll design that a little bit more later. All right, so switch out and let's kind of follow the color wheel a little bit, and let's get your red crayon. Now I'm going to be using markers because you'll be able to see it better. So I'm going to draw the center of my flower and then put on my petals, and then I'll use a green to do the stem. So I'm going to do my first flower. Since we have to get on 6, actually let's do this. Let's maybe get a brown out, and let's do the center of our flowers, and let's get those spaced where we want them, unless you want to do this with pencil. It's up to you. So I'm going to put one flower way over here. So this is the center of my flower. There's one. I might do this flower a little higher. 2, maybe a little lower. 3, we're doing 6. 4, 5, and then this one maybe over here. We'll have it coming off to the side. I'll go ahead and put the initials in the center so that way we'll remember what color we want to do them. So this one's going to be red. So I'm going to put in an R, just in case we run out of time too, then that way you'll know. Skip this one. Let's go to this one, blue. Skip this one. Let's go to this one and do yellow. Now if we were to mix red and blue, that's going to make purple. So we're going to put purple in the middle of those two. If we mix blue and yellow, it's going to make green. So I'm going to put a G in this one. And then going back to the beginning, red and yellow is going to be orange. I'm going to put an O in that one. There we go. So that'll be the center of our flowers, and we have it spaced the way we want it spaced. Now go back and get your red crayon, and I have my red marker. And I'm just going to do a simple flower, like the 5-6 petal flower. If you want to do sunflowers, if you want to do roses, whatever you're wanting to do. But I'm just going to do like the daisy type flower. So put on your petals, draw big. Okay. And then let's go ahead and do, let's go on to blue. Get your blue crayon. Draw on your petals. And you can probably just be doing this with crayon. It's okay if you make a mistake. We can always fix it. And then get your yellow. Let's get our primary colors done first. Okay. Now, go ahead and get in your crayon box and get out your secondary colors, which is your purple, your green, and your orange. And let's draw with those 3. So I'm going to need my purple. I wish I could do it with crayon too, but I tried it and it just didn't show up on the camera very well. Marker shows up a lot better. Now, if this bumps into your other flower, that's okay. Just kind of tuck it underneath. And then green. And this one's going to go under. And then grab your orange. And there's our 6 flowers. If you want to go back and put the stems in, get your green crayon and just kind of bring those into your base. Got some layering going on, so try to tuck those in. Got my little orange flower over here. And then I'll bring this one right here too. And then if you want to add leaves, you can add some leaves to kind of fill up the base. Now, we're going to try to color these, though, with just the 3 primary colors. So, when you color your red one, you can use your red crayon. And since this is representing a Monet painting, we can kind of color any direction you want to color. Doesn't have to be perfect. We can kind of show some of that white. We want it to kind of look like an Impressionist style. So, just try to stay in the lines. It's kind of a scribble. I know we don't get to scribble much in art, but today, since we're representing Monet, and it's supposed to kind of look like his paintings, using large brush strokes, we can kind of color different directions. I'm going to color this really fast because I'm wanting to get to one of the intermediate or one of the secondary colors. All right, so I'm going to finish this one up, then I'm going to move on. I don't know if we'll have enough time to finish the entire picture, but what I've done, I have made a Facebook group on Facebook, and I will show you what it's under. It's Mrs. Armstrong's art class. It has to do with Sequoyah Elementary. Go ahead and change to your blue. And after you finish your picture, if you want to show it to me, you can get an adult to help you find that group, take a picture, and you can send it to me. You can post it to me on Facebook. Just tell me your name when you post it. And if you're not from Sequoyah, I'd love to know where you're from. Now, I'm going to kind of move on. After this one, we're going to go to purple. And I want you to try to use just your primary colors to create your purple. It's a little bit harder to mix crayon than it is paint, but we can try. So I'm going to move on up and finish this one. Trying to stay in the lines. And when you're done with your flowers, you can come back in and you can color the centers brown if you want to, or you can change them to yellow or orange, depending on what you're wanting. All right, so we're wanting to make purple. And we know that red and blue make purple. So if you come up here, now if you don't like doing it this way, just grab your secondary color of purple and go ahead and just color it purple. But I'd like for you to try a little bit on a couple of petals maybe on mixing. So color it a little bit red, or you can start it with blue, it doesn't matter. Probably purple is one of the hardest colors to make too, so it may not look the greatest. And then color lightly with your blue on top. And it's going to look a little purple. It's not the prettiest purple, but it is representing purple. I'm not going to finish this one. I'm just going to do a couple of petals. I'm going to move over here to green. We're going to start with our blue. I'm going to do a couple of petals of blue on the green. And then the other color that mixes in with blue to make green is yellow. You just kind of rub it on. And again, kind of looks like a A, because you can still see the blue, you can see the yellow, but your eyes will kind of blend that together to create that green. And then to make orange, we'll do a couple of petals of red. And we will add what color with it to make our orange. Yellow. So add your yellow on top. And it's going to make that orange came out really good. So red and yellow. So you can finish your flower. And then if you want, you could just reach into your box and pull out a intermediate color. Turquoise is one of my favorite colors. They call it blue-green. And maybe you could color your base with one of your intermediate colors. And you can design the inside here if you want. If you want to write Monet's name so that you know it's a Monet, I'm going to do the M with red, and then the O with purple, the N with blue, the E with green, the T with yellow, and underline it with orange. There we go. So hopefully you'll get yours finished. You'll take a picture. You will send it to me. And can I turn the smart board on one more time? Because I've got my Facebook page up here that I'd love for you guys to find. Can you turn the camera over here? There we go. Look for Mrs. Armstrong's art class, Sequoyah Elementary, Claremore, Oklahoma. When you finish, have an adult take a picture, send it to me on Facebook. Make sure your name is with it, maybe your grade, and then the school that you're from, especially if you're not from Sequoyah. Thank you for joining us, and I'll see you next Tuesday at 9 o'clock. Okay.
Good morning, Sequoyah Elementary students. Mrs. Woodson here, coming to you from the elementary library, where I am beyond excited to get to share a little library in your living room this morning. I don't know about you, but I've been noticing that spring has sprung outside, and if we had to pick a season to be stuck at home to do homeschooling, I'm very thankful that we have the season of spring to get to enjoy in our very backyard. You know, I've been seeing all over social media where teachers have been sending boys and girls outside to do scavenger hunts in their backyard. And I've been cleaning up the debris in my backyard too, just working. And I've been seeing some of the very things that I've seen posted. Recently I saw a tree frog. He was stuck right to my garden hose. And I was watering some grass, and he never moved. He was stuck like super glue right to the end of that handle. A sign of spring. I'm thankful for that. Look, here's another thing I saw in my backyard when I was cleaning up. I was moving a wheelbarrow down to my burn pile. It was packed full of leaves and debris. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw a little dot of yellow floating through the sky. It was a monarch butterfly. Another sign of spring. Check this out. This guy was buzzing my head as I was sweeping out my garage with a broom. All kinds of winter leaves had blown in there. And I was sweeping it out. And this fat bumblebee was buzzing my head. And I was like, why is he buzzing my head? I'm not a flower. And then I noticed at the corner of my house, there was a lilac bush that had bloomed. And he didn't want me. He wanted the tree. He was after that sweet-smelling flower. Now check this next guy out. He kind of freaks me out. I don't know about you, but I was using a rake. Thank goodness for springtime tools when you're cleaning up your yard, right? I was using a rake to uncover leaves over some flowers that were covered up, and there he was. Yes, 2 feet long. I'm not kidding. It was a garter snake, and I can tell you this. I was beyond thankful to have that rake between me and him. I pulled back the leaves, and he started coming at me, and I had to jump back. And then I used my tool to help him go the other way, and he did. He went his way, and I went mine. I can tell you that if you come across one of these guys in your backyard, don't pick it up. Don't try to put it in a jar. Keep the rake between you and him, because you never know if he might be the kind that might make you sick if he bites you. But yes, social distancing for sure between snake. The rake is a good tool for you to remember. You know, another tool that I'm beyond thankful for, let me get it. Can I reach over here and grab it? It's kind of over here to the side, and I might not should do this, but I'm going to. I hope that's okay. Is the umbrella. You know, there's a saying that goes like this: April showers bring May flowers. And we're thankful for that. Some of the flowers are already coming up, but I'm thankful for the umbrella. But this is what I want to ask you this morning. When you open up your umbrella, I know I'm thankful that when I push the button, it comes open. And I'm really glad that it works to keep the rain off my head. But have you ever thought about how it works? What makes it do what it does? You know, when you come in and ask me a question in the library, what do I tell you? I say, let's look it up. Let's go over to the nonfiction and see if we can find a book, or if we can look it up online to find out how it works. I'd never thought about how the little umbrella works before, and so I thought I would look it up. You know, nonfiction books are written for the purpose to inform us. The author doesn't write the book to entertain us. They write them, and they chock them full of diagrams, captions, bold words. They even give us a mini dictionary in the back called a glossary. There's an index that helps us find things inside it. And so what I did to find out about this umbrella was I looked through some nonfiction books, just like I tell you to do when you come in to have a question about something that you really want to know about. And I pulled out a diagram of an umbrella for us. And believe it or not, on this diagram are all of the words for the parts of this umbrella and how it works. Pull it for you. Better? Nonfiction, written to inform. And this is just one example of a nonfiction text feature. because that's what the author does. When you pick up a nonfiction book, you don't have to read the whole thing to learn something new. You can pick it up and read anywhere in that book, and the author does that so you can take a nugget of knowledge into your brain and keep it with you. The handle is here. Let's take a look at this. Here's each one of the vocabulary words with an arrow pointing to the part of the umbrella. The handle. Here's the shaft of the umbrella. Here's the bottom spring. Here's the top spring. This little thing here is called the runner. Let's take a look inside this one because this is maybe a little bit hard to see, and I really kind of want to show you how this thing works because you can't see it move in the diagram, and I want to show you move with the umbrella. So let me find my button here. Okay. So when it opens up, this part's the handle. This is the shaft. The bottom spring, and this black thing is called the runner. Fun name. It's called the runner. Notice what the runner is doing. As it goes up, attached to it are these little wires that look like bicycle spokes. Do you see the little bicycle spokes? I hope you can see it. Those are called spreaders. The spreader is attached to the top of the runner. Then it connects to each one of these long metal things called ribs. Like we have ribs that hold us up. The ribs of the umbrella hold the canopy in place. These are called ribs. So as the runner goes down, the spreaders fold in and it pulls the ribs in and the umbrella comes down. When you let the spring out and you push it up, it comes up and clicks past that top spring. Hear it click, and it stays in place, and the spreaders work together with the ribs to hold it. This is something I didn't know, and I do so. Here's what I didn't know. I didn't know that each one of these little triangle shapes of fabric is called a gore. Each one is called a gore. If you're a seamstress, you probably knew that. Each one's a gore, and when the seamstress takes the sewing machine and they sew the fabric together, before they put it on, they sew each triangle shape together. And when they have all the triangle shapes together, sewed together, they place it over the top. That makes the canopy for the umbrella that keeps us dry. Underneath, they go back inside, and there's a little thread that they sew onto the rib to hold it into place. So when you pop your umbrella up, the canopy doesn't fly down the street. I love how the umbrella keeps us dry. You know, there's another kind of umbrella I wanted to show you. It's called the Parasol. I had a friend let me borrow this one. It's a little different because to be an umbrella, the fabric has to be waterproof. Okay? A parasol has the same concept. It has the same concept. It has the handle, it has the shaft, and here's the runner inside. Look how pretty that is. Wow. Isn't that fun? Listen for it. It should click into place. There it goes. It's on that top spring. And it holds open the canopy. Look at the ribs on this one. Isn't that beautiful? This is not an umbrella. It's a parasol because if I hold this up in the rain, I'm going to get wet. I have to have waterproof. But this is used to keep me out of the sun. One more umbrella, and then I have a fiction story to talk about that's way different than nonfiction. And you're going to love it. One more umbrella. My friend Paisley let me borrow this little umbrella here. Same concept, because you can have so many different designs. They're so beautiful, umbrellas can be. Look at this fun little umbrella. The handle is pink. Here are the end caps. Here comes the runner. The runner isn't black on this one. It's a white plastic runner. And when I slide it open, ready for this. This is so cute. We have a unicorn. Don't you love that? This little horn in his ears. How fun. Let's take a look at a fiction story today. Let's take a look at a fiction story I have for you today about Harry, because Harry has an umbrella problem. The problem Harry has, I think you're going to be surprised at how his family helps him solve this problem. Let's find out. Harry by the Sea. It's by Jean Zion, and the pictures are by Margaret Bloy Graham. Jean Zion is the author. That means he's the man that wrote the words for the story. And the illustrator is the lady, and she's a lady in this case. She did the pictures. Let's find out what problem Harry has, and I think you're going to be surprised at how Harry's family helps him solve his problem. Here's the title page, Harry by the Sea, by Jean Zion, pictures by Margaret Bloy Graham. Harry was a white dog with black spots who liked everything about the seashore except the hot sun. One day, when the sun was hotter than ever, Harry looked for a shady place to sit. But when he tried to get under the family's beach umbrella, it was too crowded and the family made him leave. And when he crawled into the children's sand castle, the walls fell in and the children chased him away. And when he walked in the shade that a fat lady made, she became angry and made him stop following her. Get lost, she said. She was very annoyed. Poor Harry, he's so hot. The sun was very hot, and Harry had walked a long way from the main beach. He was tired, so he sat down at the water's edge. All of a sudden, a big wave came from behind and crashed right on top of Harry. Whew, nice. When the wave rolled back, Harry was left floating in the water. He was completely covered with seaweed. He didn't look like a dog anymore. He looked like something from the bottom of the sea. Suddenly, a lady saw him floating toward her. Help! Help! She screeched. It's a sea monster! The lifeguard heard her and blew his whistle. Everybody out! He shouted. Everybody out! Poor Harry. He does look like a sea monster. Everyone ran out of the water and so did Harry. He was still covered with cold, wet seaweed. It made him feel cool and comfortable. And now he didn't mind the sun at all. He felt so good, he started running back to his family. On his way, some people saw him. It's a sea serpent, one of them screamed. It's a giant sandworm, screeched another. Harry had water in his ears. He could hardly hear them. He kept on running towards the main beach. He does look like he's floating. When he got there, Harry stopped and stared. Instead of his family's umbrella, now there were hundreds of them, and they were all striped, just like his family's. Harry couldn't tell one umbrella from another. Suddenly, two beach attendants saw him. Holy smoke, one of them gasped. What's that? It's a bushy-backed sea slug, exclaimed the other. They whispered for a moment, and then they ran. Oh, I can't find him. Harry went from umbrella to umbrella, but he couldn't find his family. Everyone wore sun hats and sunglasses, and everyone used suntan oil, just like his family. Harry looked and sniffed very hard, but it was no use. He couldn't tell one family from another. Suddenly, the two beach attendants came running back carrying a big trash basket. They ran towards Harry. Stand back, one of them said to the crowd. We're going to catch it and take it to the aquarium, said the other. Poor Harry's trying to find him. Then they tiptoed up behind Harry and raised the trash basket over his head. Harry didn't know the beach attendants were behind him. He was listening to something. He thought he heard someone calling his name. There it was again. Harry! 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 Now, Harry was sure. He didn't wait another second. Just as the basket came down, he ran. He ran right out from under that basket. It happened so fast, the beach attendants just stood there with their mouths open. As he raced through the crowd, there he goes. As he raced through the crowd, people screamed. Some people ran, and some people did both. But Harry paid no attention. He kept on running across the beach. When he got to the hot dog stand, he stopped and barked happily. Behind the counter, the hot dog man was shouting. It was his voice that Harry had heard. But Harry had water in his ears and he couldn't hear very well. The man wasn't shouting, "Harry, Harry, Harry." He was shouting, "Hurry, hurry, hurry. Get 'em while they're hot." Harry still thought the man was calling his name. He barked and jumped with joy. He jumped so much that suddenly all the seaweed fell off. When the crowd saw that Harry was a dog, they gasped. They could hardly believe their eyes. All at once, Harry began to jump higher than ever. There he goes. He saw the children. They were running towards him. "Oh, Harry," they cried, "we heard you bark. We've been looking all over for you." Harry was so happy, he did a little dance. The hot dog man was very grateful to Harry for bringing the crowd to his stand. He sold all the hot dogs he had. He gave Harry a free hamburger. The lady who had told Harry to get lost, she came along and she bought him a cold, cold drink. "You're no sea monster," she said. "You're just a lost hot dog." Everyone laughed except the two children. "He's not lost," one of them said. "He's Harry and he's ours." Then they hurried off to join the rest of the family. They're afraid somebody might want to take this cute little dog home with them. They don't want that to happen. The next time Harry's family went to the beach, they brought a new umbrella. Harry liked this one very much. It was white with black spots, and no matter how crowded the beach became, it was easy to find. But best of all, it was big. And when the sun got very hot, there was room underneath for them all. I love how Harry got his problem solved. Do you see what his family did for him? Do you notice what they did to the umbrella? It is bigger, isn't it? Notice how big it is? Do you notice what they did with the color? Do you see it? Black dots and a white background, just like the dog. Remember back in the story when he went to the beach to find his family? He couldn't find them because everyone's umbrella looked the same. You know, his family helped Harry solve his problem by making the umbrella be unique and look different. I love that they helped Harry and they made it big enough for where he can sit underneath it and find a cool place. Because see, in every fiction story that an author writes, the main character, let me find my little Harry puppet here, if I can find him. The main character, Harry, I'm coming back. The main character, Harry, they have a problem. And the character works to solve the problem. You know, Harry, in this story, I love what he does. When he sees his family, he doesn't run away from them even though they were mean to him. He loves them and he forgives them quickly and he goes with them right away. I love that. You know, I learn a lesson from fiction stories, and I tell you guys this all the time. That even though it's a fiction story and the author wrote it to entertain us, not like the nonfiction book we talked about a minute ago, you can still learn a lesson. I'm going to work on that. When someone does something like shoos me away or maybe says something to me that isn't very nice, I'm going to try to be like Harry in this story, and I'm going to forgive them quickly and love them anyway. I love that little lesson Harry taught us. Can I show you guys 3 parts of the story? Because, you know, fiction is very different. Let me find my little props here. Fiction is very different than nonfiction because the author's purpose isn't to inform us. Fiction is written to entertain us. There's my little, my fun little, can you see that, Mr. Trujillo? The author isn't going to have the character do things out of order because he's going to introduce the character at the beginning of the story, and then he's going to introduce a problem that the character's working to solve. The sequence of events that the story has to follow to the reader is going to make sense. So look at this story, whoops, and think back to what happened in the story, because Harry worked to solve the problem. Do you remember what his problem was? Do you remember what his problem was? His problem was that he was hot, remember? I've been that hot before on the beach. I bet you have too, and maybe even recently, because it's been that hot outside. So if we were going to put this in the right order, and I have these little tags here, beginning, middle, and end. Which one of these would we stick the beginning one in? Was it when he got the new umbrella? Oh, here he is, as he's a sea monster. That wouldn't make sense, would it? No. Beginning is when it was hot. And, you know, they shoot him away, didn't they? They weren't nice. They didn't mean to be that way. They had worked hard on that castle. It's beautiful. But they did. That was at the beginning. So let's slide this one over because the character has to start here for a fiction story to make sense. There has to be a beginning. And then, what happened next? Did he get the umbrella? Or was it when he became the sea monster? That was a problem within the problem. He was just trying to cool off. And as he cooled off, he accidentally turned into a sea monster, and everybody on the beach was terrified of him. And the worst thing was, he had another problem. He couldn't hear him. Let me get that stuck in there. He couldn't hear him. Poor guy had water in his ears. So the beginning, middle, and then the best part is usually the end, because you get to find out how that main character resolves the problem that started at the very beginning. And I love it when there's a good ending. Sometimes the endings are happy in a fiction story. Sometimes they're sad. But this one, there's always a lesson to be learned, no matter what. No matter how thick that fiction book is. There's always a beginning, a middle, and an end. And there can be all kinds of details in between. And there can be all kinds of problems that happen to the main character as he's trying to solve that problem. You know, I hope you enjoyed this story today. I wanted to let you know that I too have started a Facebook group on the internet. It's called Sequoyah, I think it's Sequoyah Elementary Book Talks. I don't have a paper with me. I apologize for that. Next week I'll try to use the smart board. Sequoyah Elementary Book Talks. You know, what we can do on that is send a 2-minute video clip on the stories that you're reading right now. Tell us a little bit about the story and why you liked it. Tell us about the character and give us a little clip of selling that book to your friends and why they should read it too. If you'll leave it on there, other friends will be encouraged to read the books you're reading, or maybe they will be encouraged to share things about their books as well. That again is Sequoyah Elementary Book Talks. That's all I have for you today. I hope you're reading something good right now. I hope you're looking online too. If you have the internet and you have access to that, there are all kinds of free fiction and nonfiction books, and there are resources that are posted on my Facebook page too every day that are free for you all to use during this stay-at-home learning time. So I hope that you're using those as well. once you've exhausted that bookshelf at your house. I know sometimes when you look at your same bookshelf over and over again, you kind of feel like, oh, I don't have anything to read, when you really do, but you just get bored with them. So that online resource is a way that you can supplement the books that you have at home. Epic Books is another great resource, too, that has all kinds of fiction and nonfiction books both posted on there for you to read. Again, I hope you are enjoying your scavenger hunts in your yards. I hope you're enjoying your reading. And that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you for enjoying the story with me. I'll see you next Tuesday. Bye-bye.
Good morning. My name is Mrs. Owens, and I teach a brilliant group of third graders at Sequoyah Claremore. I am so excited to be with you today. I was just wondering, what do you think about my glasses? Do you think they make me look really cool? Am I rocking my glasses, or do you think they make me look a little silly? Well, today I want to teach you an ELA lesson about a bird that wears really big glasses. Now, these really big glasses, they don't have any lenses in them, so I really can't see you very well, but I have my own glasses. I'll trade them out. Oh, I can see you much better now. Well, today I want to share with you, like I said, a story about a bird that wears really big glasses. But first, I'd like for you to do a little bit of thinking. I want you kind of to engage your brain a little bit. So, I want you to think about some questions. If I ask you, would you rather have one really great friend or 10 just okay friends? Think about that for a minute. One really great friend, best friend, BFF, or 10 okay friends. If somebody's there with you this morning, tell them what you think, and then later maybe you can discuss your reasons why you felt like you did. What about this one? Would you rather have all the same interests as your friends, everybody liked the same thing, or maybe you would like some friends that had some differences? Think about that for a minute. If you like football, do you only want friends that play football, or maybe you would like to have friends that played soccer or skateboarded or something like that? Think about that. Here's another one. Would you rather dress and look like your friends or have your own unique style? Would you like to stand out from the crowd and be different? Or do you want to be like everybody else? That's just some things for you to think about. Well, today, as we share the story of this little bird with the big glasses, we're going to listen to the story with intention. And what I mean is, I want you to listen for a purpose. We're going to investigate the idea of theme, the academic word theme. Now, to discover theme, well, first, I probably should tell you, in case you've forgotten, that theme is the lesson or message that the author is teaching you. It's what you're learning from what you read. Now, when we think about theme, we have to use our imagination and our inferencing skills, because here's the interesting thing about theme. It's rarely ever stated in the story. We're going to use all of our investigation skills, all of our inferencing skills, and we're going to draw to a conclusion a lesson that the characters in the story might learn. Themes oftentimes will evoke emotions in us. Themes will make us feel happy or sad. One writer even said it's kind of that gut feeling that you get when you read a story. Here's some things that we might keep in mind as we're looking or listening for the theme. To identify the theme, let's look at these questions. What are the characters learning about their life? What are they learning about life? What life experiences are they having? How can this book make me a better person? How can it change me and make me a better person? And what life lesson is being taught? Now, here's one thing I would tell you about theme. Two different readers can read the very same book, and they can come up with a different theme out of the book. And you might say, well, how's that possible? It's because of our schema. We all come from different backgrounds, and we all have different life experiences, and whatever you bring to the table oftentimes affects what you see out of a book. But it's okay. It's okay. Books have multiple lessons and multiple things that can be taught through them. So, with that said, I'm going to get a little closer to you so you can see my really cool book. It's titled Nerdy Bertie. This is Nerdy Bertie. Isn't he cute? His glasses are too big. His wings are too small. Now, I need to stop for a minute. Back in Mrs. Owens' class, way back in August, we talked about what a good reader would do when they read a book. And we talked about we made what we called a reading salad. And that's where we would read some text. We would actually touch the text. And then we would pause and we would think. And we would draw things that we were familiar with when we read. So if I read this, I might say, hey, his glasses are too big. I wear glasses. I wonder if my glasses are too big. Or I look at his wings are too small. I wonder, can he fly very far with little bitty wings? Or can he go very high with little bitty wings? We connect with our text, and that's the way that we become a better reader. We will remember then what we read. There was a word that we used when we made that reading salad in August. It was a big word. Does anybody happen, if you're from Mrs. Owens' class, you might remember it was a great big word. Was it metacognition? Yeah, it was. It was metacognition. It was that thinking about my thinking. And that's what a good reader will do when they read. So always pause and think. Here's Nerdy Bertie. He's allergic to birdseed. When all the other birds are hanging out together at the bird feeder, Nerdy Bertie is scrounging for breadcrumbs. I had a little boy in my class this year with some allergies. I wonder if he ever felt different because he had allergies and maybe couldn't have something that the other kids had. Something to think about. Oh, look at that. Eagles, cardinals, and robins are the cool birdies. Now that makes me happy because I'm an eagle and I'm a cool bird according to this book. Look at that eagle. This eagle, he has wind tunnel tested head shape. He is aerodynamic. And he has impressively sculpted chest muscles. Wow. And he's got abs of steel. I'm feeling pretty good about being an eagle. That's my school mascot. Over here is a cardinal. Now, I think there's a school that's local that might have a cardinal as their mascot too. Let's see what they say about him. He has a glossy red pompadour. What in the world do you think a pompadour is? Well, look closely at the clue that the illustrator gives you. What do you think? You think that pompadour is probably those feathers that stick up? I think you're right. What do you think we might wear that would be similar to a pompadour? Do you think it might be a hat? Could I put big feathers on my hat if I wanted to? Sure, I could. Well, this cardinal has a glossy red pompadour, and notice the other two attributes that the writer decided to share was that he has a glossy red attire and glossy red tail. That just goes to tell me that I think that the cardinal, the red part of the cardinal must be a pretty dramatic thing, and I've seen red cardinals before, and they are beautiful. Now, here's another bird. This is the robin. The robin has beady eyes with superior worm vision. And he's got this worm-fed physique. Look at that chest and belly. He is proud of that. But down here it says he's got feet, but they don't have anything to do with worms. I wonder then if he doesn't scratch in the ground to get worms, wonder how he gets his worms. I don't know. Let's see. There's 3 things that an eagle is good at. He's really good at hunting. Look up here. The illustrator says he's hunting a rhinoceros. And here, he's also really good at fishing. This one, he's fishing. He caught a shark. And down here it says he's really good at football. Woohoo! The cardinal, on the other hand, look at this cardinal. It says that he sings like a rock star. Now, if you were in Mrs. Owens' class, you would have been getting up out of your chair and coming to my desk and telling me, Mrs. Owens, I hear figurative language. And you would be exactly right. It says he sings like a rock star. Now, remember, when we compare two unlike things like a bird and a rock star, and we use the word like, we're using a particular kind of figurative language. Do you happen to remember what that was called? Think hard. How about simile? That's exactly right. They used the simile in this book. Love figurative language. If you were in my class, you'd have been running to my desk to get a piece of gum because we celebrate figurative language. Now, the cardinal, he was also really good at posing. He showed off those muscles, and he was very good at attracting fans. So those were his attributes. But here's that robin again. Now, you remember that he had that worm-fed physique. Well, listen to his attributes. He's really good at picking on worms, insulting worms, and eating worms. Now, you know, we posed a question. I wonder how he gets all those worms because he doesn't use his feet. Get a load of him. What do you think he uses? Do you think he uses that beak? I do. I think he uses that beak. I have one of these in my front yard, in a tree in my front yard, and I watched him very closely now that I've been reading this book a lot and practicing for my TV debut. He's really, really cool, and he looks very much like this one. Now, Nerdy Bertie, which was the main character the story's written about, he's good too, but he's good at some different things. Nerdy Bertie's really good at reading. Oh, that makes a teacher's heart just flutter because we love kids that love to read. But he's also really good at playing video games. Well, that's okay. Lots of kids like video games. And he's also really good at reading about video games. So I guess Nerdy Bertie likes to spend a lot of time in front of his screen. The eagles, the cardinals, and the robins, they don't care about reading. Oh, that kind of makes me sad a little bit. The eagle was talking to Nerdy Bertie, and Nerdy Bertie said, "Hey, guys, I just read the coolest book." And the eagle said, who cares? And the cardinal, he said, bookworm. And the robin, I eat bookworms for breakfast. Oh, well, that wasn't very nice, was it? I'm feeling a little sad about my eagle friend. And then he said, hey, guys, I just defeated the Earthworm King in World of Wormcraft. The eagle, who cares? The robin said, nerd. The cardinal said that. And the robin said, I eat real earthworms, not digital ones. Wow. My cool birds have kind of taken a turn for the worse. Well, one day, it says eagle flew off to hunt. And cardinal flew off to impress his fans. And robin flew off to terrorize worms. Now, I want you to see what the illustrator did in this, because I know some of you, your gift is drawing and art, and you like all of really cool things like that. Look how cool the illustrator showed us that these birds had then flown away. What do you notice? All you see are their feet. Notice that they've flown away, except for our little Nerdy Bertie down here at the bottom, and he was all by himself. But he said one thing was really clear. It was awfully lonely not being a cool birdie. But then he hears something off in the distance. Why do you hang around with them? He heard somebody speak. They don't even like you. Well, he looked up, and look what was on the power lines close to him. It was another little bird. He wore glasses, too. They weren't circular like Nerdy Bertie's. They were little rectangles. And he said, they don't even like you. But they're so cool, said Nerdy Bertie. Trying to be cool is exhausting, said the new bird. You should hang around with us. And Nerdy Bertie looks at him and says, us? Looks like you're one bird. But to his shock and surprise, look, us. After all, there's always room for another Nerdy Bertie. Look at all the Nerdy Birdies up there. They look a lot like our friend. Their glasses were too big. Their wings were too small. At least half of them had birdseed allergies. They all liked to read, and most of them liked to play World of Warcraft. Look, he has his lightsaber. They were exactly like Nerdy Bertie. Wow, they had all the same interests, and they dressed like him, and they looked like him. And that just sounds like a perfect friend, doesn't it? It does, doesn't it? And then he realized something. There were way more Nerdy Birdies than cool birdies. And now they were all his friends. Doesn't that sound like a neat place to end the story? Does, doesn't it? That's kind of like a happily ever after. Nerdy Bertie got a lot of friends and everybody's happy. But it didn't end there. No, it goes on. Eagle didn't have any friends because he out hunted by himself. And Cardinal, he was always showing off. He had no friends. Know why? He was always showing off. Nobody wanted to be around him. And Robin, he was just obsessed with worm hunting. He didn't have any time to make friends. But one thing was clear. It was awfully lonely being a cool birdie. Oh, well, I thought at the beginning of the story, it really sounded like the cool birdies were what I wanted to be. But I might be changing my mind. But then a new birdie moved into the neighborhood. Now get a load of the new birdie. Do you happen to know what that is? Look at that bird. He has a little lunchbox down here at the bottom. It says, Official Hello Birdie Lunchbox. And it's got bones sticking out from the bottom of it. That is an odd-looking creature. The cool birds were unimpressed. Ooh, there's a big word. It's got a prefix, fix, and a suffix, and it means not impressed. The new bird said, "Hey, guys." And the eagle said, "Ugh, she gives me the creeps." And the cardinal said, Why does she always wear black? It's so depressing. I'm wearing black today. She eats what? They were all disgusted with the new bird. And look what they did. Can you tell without even reading a word? What did they do? They flew away. The cool birdies flew away, and they left Vulture alone. So what kind of bird was it? It was a vulture. Not a real attractive one, I might add. And Vulture hears this little voice that says, "Why would you want to hang around with them?" Now, doesn't that sound like the same thing that little bird said to Nerdy Bertie a few pages back? Yeah, exact same phrase. Being cool is exhausting. You should hang around with us. And if we look at the highline wires, we see our friend Nerdy Bertie. And he's reaching out to this vulture. Vulture did the same thing. Us? With a question mark? He just saw this one tiny little bird up there. Us! After all, there's always room for another Nerdy Bertie. Right, guys? And he looks over his shoulder at his friends, and he says, "Hey, here's another friend to join us." Hold it. Hold it. Where are her glasses? Where is her lightsaber? And have you heard what she eats? Black. She is definitely not one of us. Nerdy Bertie was so confused. But there's always room for another Nerdy Bertie, right? And there was a question mark after that. That's the problem. She's not a Nerdy Bertie. She's just weird. Oh, gosh. Nerdy Bertie looked at his flock of friends. There is a word for Mrs. Owens' third graders. We learned flock. That was a particular kind of noun in Shirley English, a collective noun. It was followed by that prepositional phrase. Remember that? So he looked at his flock of friends. The telephone wire was packed with them. There was all of his friends, his so-called friends. He looked at the new bird sitting there alone, and one thing was clear. It was awfully lonely being alone. This is Nerdy Bertie. His glasses are too big. His wings are too small. This is Vulture. She wears contact lenses. Well, she does sort of have glasses, doesn't she? But she has contact lenses. And her wings are enormous. Vulture eats dead things. That's why she had a bone in her lunchbox. Nerdy Bertie does not. Remember what Nerdy Bertie eats? Breadcrumbs. Nerdy Bertie likes video games. Woohoo! But Vulture, no, not so much. Nerdy Bertie and Vulture don't like all the same things, but they really like each other. Think back. Did you really want to be like all of the other friends? If you ever need a friend, you can hang around with them. Look how cool the illustrator showed you the difference in their sizes. After all, there's always room for another Bertie. And look who shows up at the end of the book. It's a huge bird. It's got great big feet. It's got purple legs and little green feathers that hang down. I wonder what kind of bird that is. I don't know. Now, if we think about Nerdy Bertie and Vulture's friendship, we know that they are unique. Our expectation in our classroom, number 1, says we will value one another as unique and special individuals. And I think that's what Nerdy Bertie and Vulture did. Now, let's quickly get back to our lesson on theme. We'll finish this up. Remember that theme, we had to talk about things that the characters would learn about life. And you might come up with single words. If you come up with a single word, it might be a word like kindness or acceptance, maybe even differences. We might call that a theme seed. But what we want to try to do is make a theme statement. It has to be a complete sentence. It's got to follow those 5 Shirley rules of subject, verb, complete sense, capital letter, end mark. It's got to have all those things. It has to tell what the characters learned in the text, and then it has to have evidence. Ooh, everybody say evidence. Good. That is so important. Remember how hard we worked at proving what we said. We couldn't just make something up, or I think we had to base it on evidence. So what do you think about this theme statement? Individuals can look different and have different interests and still be good friends. What do you think about that? Do you think they could? I think they could. Here's something I'd like for you to do. Something when you have some spare time. I want you to do what the author did in the book. And I want you to come up with 3 characteristics that are really good about you. Now, I know that you have multiple characteristics that you could write about yourself. Pick 3 that you're pretty proud of, and write them down. And then where the smiley face is, draw yourself a portrait, a self-portrait. Then kind of compare that. Think about somebody that you're really close to and just see, I wonder if my friends are just like me or maybe a little different. And then to take the learning a little deeper, here's some things I'd like for you to try. I really like to watch Jimmy Fallon at 10 o'clock. Now that I don't have to get up really early, go to school, I like to watch a talk show. I'd like for you to maybe role play a talk show and let somebody interview the other characters, like interview the eagle or get the point of view of the robin or the cardinal. Create a talk show and video it. It'd be really fun. Or just rewrite the story from a different character's point of view. That's always fun to do. Or continue the story. Who was that big bird at the end with the purple legs and the green feathers? I bet it was somebody really cool in your imagination. You know, this has been a lot of fun to talk about differences and likenesses and theme and understand a little bit about the story. You know, friends are something that we should value and trust. You know, when I put my red glasses on and I look like this at the beginning, I have to wonder, did you think that lady's kind of wacky? Or did you think, oh, that might be kind of fun? Don't overjudge somebody on the way that they look until you've had a chance to get to know them. Just like Nerdy Bertie and the vulture, they certainly didn't look the same, did they? They certainly didn't have the same interest or the same characteristics. But in the story, we learned that you don't have to be just like everybody else. You can be different and still be great friends. I'd like to leave you with something, though. Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "Many people will walk in and out of your life, but only true friends will leave footprints on your heart." Footprints on your heart. Think about that. Only true friends will leave footprints on your heart. I can just see that vulture has little bitty Nerdy Bertie footprints all over his heart. And I don't know if Nerdy Bertie has great big vulture footprints on his heart. Probably so. It's been great seeing you, and it's been great being back in my classroom. I'm so excited. You guys have a fabulous day, and I'll see you next Thursday.
Hello, my name is Rochelle Helbig, and I am the Family and Consumer Science teacher here at Sequoyah High School. And I just want to say thank you very much for watching, and to all the students out there, we miss you very much. But we're glad that you're here, and I want to start today with Play-Doh Plus is the name of our episode. We're going to focus on child development today, and I'd like to start by washing our hands. That's an important thing right now, that we wash our hands. So we're going to wash our hands today. We're going to turn the water on and get our hands wet. Put the soap on your hands. Rub your hands together. Make sure that you go in between your fingers, on the backs of your hands, down the wrists. Take your fingers and pinch them together and kind of get the fingernails and everything in the inside. You're supposed to sing the happy birthday song or the ABC song. So sing away and then rinse them off. And if you have paper towels, that's the best thing to use. But we may not have a lot of paper towels at home right now, so it'd be fine for you to just decide, hey guys, everybody, this is the towel that we're going to use to dry hands off with today. That's what you need to do at your house. Okay, we're going to start with the Play-Doh. I'm going to show you two methods of Play-Doh today. The first one is the Stovetop Method. And we will start by putting all of our ingredients in our pan. We need 1 cup of flour, 1/4 of a cup of salt, and I do this over the trash can because salt has a way of kind of getting away from you real quick. So I'm just going to kind of shake that, get that level, put that in there. And then I need 1 tablespoon of oil. And I need 1 tablespoon of cream of tartar. Now, the tablespoon doesn't fit in this little container very well, so I know that 3 teaspoons is also 1 tablespoon. So I'm going to use the 3 teaspoon method and get that as flat as possible. Okay, there we go. Wash my hands again, rinse them off. All right. And then it calls for 1 cup of water. You can also put some food coloring or even and this takes just a little while. But let me explain a little bit about what's going to happen each episode. I'm going to be showing you some type of a cooking demonstration each time. We'll also have what's called a fun food each time. Each episode, I'll have a fun food item for us to make together. And I'm just hoping that you'll make some of these things for yourself at home. I'll also have some type of a sewing project. That if you're interested in doing a sewing project, then you can get with me and I'll give you more details. I won't be able to actually do a sewing demonstration in the time that we have, but I can get with you later and get you some more details on it later and help you out. So, okay. This is starting to get thicker, and that's what's going to happen. It's going to get thicker. I would just have it on a medium heat and stir, stir, stir. You'll notice that today I used a dry measuring cup and a liquid measuring cup. And we talked about that in my Facts 1 class last fall, that dry things like flour, we use the dry measuring cups, and with liquid like the water we use today, we need to use our liquid measuring cup. Now this is starting to stick. I'm just going to have to get a little bit more vigorous with it. This would be a good thing for you to do for your brothers and sisters, if you have some younger brothers and sisters, but this is probably on the stovetop like this, and stirring this is something that a big kid should do. But you can do it for your younger brothers and sisters. Okay, now this is starting to form a ball, and it's getting harder and harder to stir, so you can see it's kind of forming a ball. I just want to do this until there's no wetness anymore. Okay, I think we're there. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the heat. I'm going to let that sit there for just a second and grab some wax paper. And I'm going to put this out on some wax paper. Then the next part of the process is the fun part, and that's where you get to knead it together. Now this is a little bit warm, so you may want to just let it sit there for a few minutes, but it's not too bad. And so now I'm just going to knead it together, and that's the fun part. Like I said, it's a little warm. I'm going to let that cool down just a tiny bit before I keep going with it. All right, so the next thing is the microwave method. So the microwave method, I have the same ingredients in here. I have a cup of flour. I have 1/4 of a cup of salt here, but I chose, instead of using the cream of tartar, which you may not have at home, I chose to do the substitute, which is for baking powder. So for 3 teaspoons of cream of tartar, I needed to use 4.5 teaspoons of baking powder. So I've got the baking powder in here, and I need to turn the microwave on. I have approximately 3/4 of a cup of water. When I've done this at home the last couple of times, it's been only 1/2 cup of water, so I'll go slow with the water. And then I also need 1 teaspoon of oil in this too. So I'll put the 1 teaspoon of oil. You'll notice that the measuring spoons can do liquid and dry ingredients. Okay, so continue to knead this. Like I said, this is the fun part of this job. And this will make 2 balls of Play-Doh. Woo, warm. That's hot. Right. So like I said, I have 1 cup of flour, 1/4 of a cup of salt, 1 tablespoon of oil, the 4.5 teaspoons of the baking powder, and now I'm going to put in the water. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of food coloring to that, and I'm going to go slow. I want almost all of it, not quite all of it. Make sure it's not too sticky. Okay. Now for this, I almost got it too sticky. Try it. If I get it a little too sticky, which it's just about a little too sticky, I'm going to add just a little bit of flour to it so that I can knead this one also. Okay, that looks better. I'm going to put these guys over here and then plop this guy out here. All right, and then the same process. We just need to knead this together. We're just going to play with this and keep going and going and kneading until we get it all worked together, okay? Now, I'm just going to leave that. So you've seen both of those. Now we're going to move on to our fun food. So let me wash my hands again. I'm going to get my hands wet. A, B, C, D, D, E, F, G. Or you can sing a happy birthday song to yourself. All right. Before I move to the fun food item, the Cheerio bars, I want to talk about the bonus question. That if you're watching this right now, you can do this as one of the assignments that I have for you this week. And the bonus question for this week is, you need 3 balls of Play-Doh instead of the 2 that this recipe makes. You need 3. So I want you to send me the altered recipe. What would you do? How would you go about changing the recipe to make it 3 balls instead of 2 balls? So now what I have here is the Cheerio bars. I'm going to put it medium. I do have 2 tablespoons of margarine in here. Now you say, some of you I know have already made this because I've seen your pictures. Jenna, way to go. So you know that 2 tablespoons is not what is called for in the recipe. Actually, I'm going to half this recipe. So if I have 2 tablespoons of margarine in here, the full recipe would be 4 tablespoons. Okay? 4 tablespoons is how much of a cup? Well, you need to know how many tablespoons are in a cup. And there's 16 tablespoons in a cup, so you know that's 1/4 of a cup. I'm also going to put in 2 cups of marshmallows. So the actual full recipe is 4 cups of marshmallows. Okay? And I'm going to put in now 1/4 of a cup of peanut butter. So the actual recipe calls for, do you know what's twice of 1/4 of a cup? If you said 1/2 cup, you got it right. So 1/2 cup of peanut butter is the full recipe. Okay, so this is something I'm just going to stir until everything's melted together. If you've made very many things in the kitchen, you may recognize this same procedure as Rice Krispie treats. And even in Rice Krispie treats, they don't normally put peanut butter in, but sometimes I'll even put peanut butter in my Rice Krispie treats. You can use different kinds of cereal with this sauce that you're going to be making, this marshmallow sauce. So, it's melting. I have 2.5 cups of Cheerios measured out into this bowl. So the actual recipe calls for 5 cups of Cheerios. Okay, it's looking good. You can see what it looks like. All the marshmallows are just about melted. And as soon as they are, I'm going to take it off the heat, turn this off, and take it off the heat because I don't want this to get too hot because then it'll make my Cheerio bars a little too crunchy. Okay, I'm going to put in my Cheerios and stir that together. Now, the very last step is to put in the M&Ms, and I'm going to wait until I have the Cheerios pretty much all mixed together because the M&Ms have a tendency to crush and to break, so I don't want to do that. I've also got my pan over there ready. I've already sprayed it and I've got it ready to go. I'm using a Teflon pan to cook in so that it won't stick so badly, so I'm just going to put my M&Ms in and carefully mix those up. Doesn't take much. Grab my pan. Like I said, it's already been sprayed. And then I'm just going to dump this out into my pan. Put that on a cool burner so it can cool down before I wash it. And then voila, there we go with our Cheerio bars. Okay, and I'll eat this later. All right, so we've done our Play-Doh and our Cheerio bars, so now we're going to move over to some other child development type activities that in Facts 1, you've done a few of these things, and in my second hour class, you were going to be getting into actually, you would have made the Play-Doh for the kindergartners that you were going to go teach, and you would have been making activities. So you can see here that we have lace cards. These lace cards are very easy to make, and they're teaching the ABCs on this one. And just the procedure, the practice of how to put something in, down, and then back up through the next hole. And they can be saying the alphabet as they're going. So this is a great learning tool. It's kinesthetic, and Also, they're learning the ABCs. So that's a fun one. Those are easy to make. I've got an example of a card here. You just need a hole punch, some yarn, and you're good. You can put numbers instead of letters if you'd like to do that. I also have the example of a little kid puzzle. We've made some of these before. You guys have made these in Facts 1, but I thought that you're at home, you might want to do a big kid puzzle. So you could get some coloring pages that you like, that you've done in the past, or a book that you have, and even make it two-sided. You could do both sides, and then make the pieces a little bit smaller, and that way you've got a little bit more difficult and a little bit more that you can do there. Okay, so these are some other activities that you might be able to do at home. The last thing that I have for you to look at is our face masks. Now, I know a lot of you have been seeing face masks. I was just at the grocery store, and I think all but maybe one person was wearing a face mask. So when I started making face masks, I started off with the elastic type. So these are great if you're going to be doing these for somebody in the medical field. They probably are going to want 4 layers. So whoever you're making masks for, you might ask them, do you want 4 layers? What style would you like before you start making them? But this works. I like this one. I have this in the car because it's very easy to go on. And it just can open up like this, and the elastic is very easy. Now, these are sometimes difficult to get the right size for the person because you really don't know who you're going to be making it for. So I moved and elastic is hard to find. There's not very much elastic out there anymore. It's difficult to find to buy. So I moved to the next style, and that is just all fabric, okay? So this style, you just have to put your layers. These are 6 by 9 rectangles, and then they are 2.5-inch strips. And then you're going to make these tucks on each side of the of your mask to make it the right size. I try to get this right here to be about a 3-inch area. So anyway, this you can do a couple different ways. You can put this on and go around your head. And tie in the back here and here, and then take this and open it up and then go behind your head here. Here and here, and so you've got it like this. That's one way to do this particular mask. Another way that I like to do this particular mask is to tie it on the side so that you can make it kind of like your elastic. So you just tie a knot here on your side and here, and get it the size that you want, and just play with it until you get it the size you want to fit over your ears. Like, this one was too more like that. Okay, so that's one way to do it. Then the most recent style that I've been doing is the t-shirt. This is t-shirt materials. I made this from an old t-shirt, and then you just loop a piece of t-shirt material through here and then you put that on the back of your head, goes over your ears, across your nose, down, and then you can cinch this up on the sides to make it whatever size you want on the sides. Like I said, it's approximately 3 inches or so for adults, this side. And then tie it around the back of your head. So that one feels good. It's easy to breathe through. Sometimes when you are moving a lot and working a lot, the ones with the 4 layers of fabric can be a little bit more difficult to breathe through. So we've got a few minutes, so let's play with our Play-Doh. We're still working with the Play-Doh. This one, like I said, it makes two balls of dough, but I was just going to Actually, let's play with some of this Play-Doh. What can we make with our Play-Doh? How about we make a little animal? We got a body. Little animal needs a head. Our little animal needs a nose. Maybe our little animal needs some ears. Does it look like a bunny rabbit to you? I'm thinking maybe it looks a little bit like a bunny rabbit. Let's put a little tail on our bunny rabbit. I have a green bunny rabbit. Another fun thing to do with Play-Doh, make little animals. Another fun thing to do with Play-Doh is to just cut out shapes. Like if you have some cookie cutters at home, okay. Well, guys, guess what? We have a lot more time than I anticipated. So I think we might just whip up some, if I can find the right ingredients, I think we might just whip up some pie dough. You guys like pie dough? I love to make pies. So I'm going to see if I happen to have, yes, I do. What do you know? My cord is kind of stretching. So I think in the 5 minutes that we have left, I can make you some pie crust. All right, if I want to make a single pie crust, like if I'm going to make a pie, like a pecan pie or something like that, I am going to use 1 cup. There it is. Oh, that had M&Ms in it. I'm going to use 1 cup of flour. Use 1 cup of flour. And I'm going to use, just let me do one thing because I was playing with Play-Doh. I'm going to rinse my hands off. I don't want to get Play-Doh in my pie crust. So I'm just going to put a little bit of salt in here. And I hope, yes, I do. I am so glad that I have some pastry blenders. This tool is called a pastry blender. So 1 cup of flour, a little bit of salt, and 1/3 of a cup of Crisco shortening is what I like to use for my pie crust. So 1/3 of a cup, this is the stick method again of measuring. 1/3 of a cup is 5 1/3 tablespoons. So I'm just going to 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 1/3. It even has it drawn on there for me. 1/3 of a cup of shortening, and I'll put that into my flour. And then I just start doing this up and down motion of cutting in, is what this term is called, with your flour and your shortening. Just cut in. And I want to do this until I have about, all the shortening worked in, and it's small little pea-size balls of shortening. Okay, so like I said, this is making a 1 crust pie crust for a pecan pie or a pumpkin pie, or even like a coconut cream pie, or you could even do maybe a quiche or something else with a single crust pie. Okay, so after I've gotten that, I want to use around 1/3 of a cup. That cup has got blue water in it. We don't want blue water in our pie crust. So I'm going to start again, like with the Play-Doh. We are going to start with a certain amount and then kind of just work into it until it gets feeling like what we want it to feel like. I'm just going to start stirring in my water. Should take around 1/3 of a cup. Okay, put a little more here. Okay, so this is just another dough. Oh, I did mean to mention that Shawnee Mills Company has donated flour to the FACS departments this year for our food labs, and so I wanted to say thank you to Shawnee Mills for the donated flour that they have given the FACS teachers this year. And so you can see I'm just stirring that until it works itself into a ball, kind of like our Play-Doh. And if we have time, I'm going to get a spot here so that we can actually roll it out. Move everything over just a little bit. My cord is kind of restricting me where I need to go, but I've got to get on this side of the island to get my...
30 seconds.
Okay, 30 seconds. Okay, well, in 30 seconds, let's see if we can do this. Maybe, maybe not. So while we're finishing this up, while you're watching me, put a little bit of flour on your board and on your rolling pin. You want to put this into a circle, and then you're just going to roll it out. One last time, don't forget the bonus question for today, which is you need 3 balls of Play-Doh instead of 2. So alter the recipe and send me the recipe altered. We're just going to continue to roll this out, flipping it over, rolling it out until you get it the size you want. If I had a pie pan here, I could tell when I get it to the right size. When I do get it to the size I want, I'm just going to fold it in force and lay it into the pie pan. Thank you. Have a great day.
everybody. My name is Owen Hosick. I'm a agriculture education instructor and FFA advisor here at Sequoyah. I just hope everybody out there is doing good. We thank you for taking some time out of your day to tune in and learn a couple things. Today we're going to talk about something that is essential for life. And so if you think of if we just think of things, or what is life dependent on? Most people would say water, oxygen, the sun, and those things are all correct, but there's often one thing that is overlooked, and that is the soil, right? We use it to grow plants that we're going to consume. We build things on it. We do a whole bunch of things that are dependent on the soil, but we usually don't think about it as being something that is critical to our everyday lives. Soil can be defined as organic and inorganic materials on the surface of the earth that provide a medium for plant growth. And so we're going to talk about just some real basic soil science type stuff today. We're going to go through kind of the composition, some of the how it's formed, and then at the very end we're going to do some different experiments that you can actually do at home to determine your soil type, and you'll figure out what all that means hopefully by the end of our time here today. So soil is formed by 6 different factors, right? And depending on how those factors interact with each other will determine the different type of soil. And so you may be thinking to yourself, well, why does that matter, right? Soil is soil. That is actually not true, and we'll get to that here in a second. But certain plants require different types of soil to be able to grow to their fullest extent. Certain soils are needed for construction or for waste filtration, so like in the bottom of a landfill, right? Those types of things. So depending on what our purpose is will determine kind of what soil is ideal for that. Okay. Out of those different soil formation factors, okay, parent material, climate, topography, or the slope or layout of the land, living organisms, and time are all of the different factors. Time being the biggest one, right? So on average, and this can be different from place to place depending on where you live on the globe, but about 25 years is required to form a single centimeter of soil. And so if you think about, right, you go out to your garden and you take a shovel in and you take up 6 inches of soil, right? That takes hundreds, if not thousands of years to form just that small layer. And so time is really one of the biggest factors when it comes to soil formation. When we talk about parent material, we're talking about the large pieces of bedrock or large sheets of rock that are broken down, weathered into really, really small pieces. And that's all part of the soil. That's all it is just rock that's broken down to really, really small pieces. So in this area, we have a lot of limestone. And so a lot of if you were to look at those little soil particles, you could trace their lineage back to large sheets of limestone that are all around our area, especially the closer you get to the Verdigris River, and if you go up Keatonville Hill on top of up there, a lot of limestone. That's actually why that area is called Limestone. Back in the day, it used to be a town, but that was like before probably anybody watching was even born. Moving on. So climate and weathering. So how much rain, how much wind, how much erosion happens to that parent material will determine some of the speed that soil is formed at. Okay, topography, so the slope or elevation. So if we have a rock on the side of Mount Everest, okay, any erosion that happens, where are those little pieces going to go? Well, they're going to fall off the side and down into the valley below, right? Because it's really, really steep. Whereas if we have a really flat plain, right, and so if there's flooding and erosion that's happening there, most of that material is going to stay in that general vicinity. Okay, so the slope and elevation of where we're at is also going to affect our soil formation. Something that's often overlooked is going to be living organisms, so plants, insects, microbes, and large animals. So we have little microscopic organisms that are breaking down organic material within the soil. And that will add certain components to it that we'll talk about here in a second. As insects and large animals, microbes, and all those things die, right, they're going to decompose and they are going to form part of the soil, right? And that's what's going to add nutrients and other things to it. And again, that last factor is going to be time. Soil just takes time. So if we have all of these different things to one extent or another in places like deserts, right? But we also have all of these factors in places like a rainforest or a deciduous forest in the eastern United States. The problem is the time, right? So we may not have enough time for these things to break down and to form soil in a place like a desert before they're blown away someplace else. Whereas if we have a valley in a forest, right, we have a lot of time where all these materials are undisturbed, and soil can actually form in those circumstances. Okay, so there's 4 different components to any given soil. If you go outside of your house, you look at it, you're going to find these 4 things. Okay, the biggest percentage, about 45% of any given soil, and I think it's important to also point out that these are averages, right? So you may have a soil that is a little bit higher in one area and lower in another, but on average, about 45% is going to be that mineral component. That's going to be that broken down bedrock and other minerals that will be floating around in the ground. Okay, 25% of soil is going to be air. You're like, well, how does that? That doesn't make any sense, right? Soil is something, right, we can hold, and when we look at it, we don't see the air. If you think about if we had like a mason jar full of marbles, right? In between those different marbles are going to be open spaces, and that's where air and also water can inhabit. So while you can't necessarily see it by looking at it, it's still going to be part of the mixture. Okay, water can be another 25%, and you'll notice we have kind of these squiggly lines right here in our pie chart, and the reason for that is that these two components can fluctuate the most, right? So depending on if we just had a huge rainstorm like we had a couple of days ago, right, the water content of our soil might be a lot higher than our air content. So all of those open spaces or pores are going to be filled with water, and as that water trickles down the profile or evaporates out of the soil, right, our air component, that percentage might increase. Probably the most important, but also the smallest of the different components is going to be organic matter. And that's going to be about 5% of the total composition of the soil. And so what that's going to be composed of is decayed material, whether that's animals, leaves, microbial activity, all those kinds of things. As they expire and fall and decompose, they get added into this mixture. Okay, and this is really important because this is where our nutrients are going to be located. All of those essential things that plants need to be able to grow and develop are going to be found within that organic matter. This particular example is at 5%. If you go to some place like the Corn Belt in the Midwest, that organic matter percentage might be 6 to 7%. As the soil breaks down, as more things decompose into the soil, right, that percentage will go higher. Places like the Corn Belt, this eastern side of Oklahoma, where we've had really lush, dense grassland for hundreds of thousands of years, as those plants decay, as animals decay, right, they all get added into the soil. So if you look at a soil that has a lot, it's really black, and that black layer is really deep, right, that's going to be higher in organic matter than if you have, just like play sand in a sandbox, right? So those are the 4 different components. Depending on environmental conditions, will determine the different percentages of each of those. Okay, so as that parent material breaks down and as that organic matter breaks down, it gets smaller and smaller the longer that weathering occurs. Okay, and so we classify soil particles, okay, into 3 different sizes. So we have sand, we have silt, and we have clay. Sand is going to be the largest, silt is going to be in the middle, and clay is going to be the smallest particle size. So if you take just pure sand, I'm sure you guys have maybe done this, whether you go to, maybe you're floating the river or you go to a beach, maybe not a beach in Oklahoma because they're all man-made, but that's different topic, different time. But, and you take a handful of sand and you feel it, right? It feels gritty. It's almost like you can feel the individual pieces. The good thing about that is that if we go back to our 4 components, right, it's going to be high in that air percentage. Okay, there's going to be a lot of space in between those particles of sand, and that is going to allow water to trickle very quickly through that soil profile. This can be good if we don't want, if we need a place to drain quickly, like maybe around a structure, or if we have a low spot and we need that water not to sit, we need it to drain and return back to the groundwater. Having a real sandy soil would be ideal. Our silt layer, if you had just pure silt, it almost feel like baby powder. And it's going to hold water and nutrients well. So a lot of the things that plants need are going to attach to those silt particle sizes, and they're still going to be accessible to plant roots and nutrient uptake, those kinds of things. Okay, the smallest is going to be clay, and I'm sure maybe if you've taken an art class or if you've ever gone to one of those places where they give you an apron and you paint and you put it in the thing and then you get it when you're done. What is the name? You know what I'm talking about. But anyways, digress. And so it's going to feel hard and real compact whenever it is dry. And when it gets wet, it's almost going to feel sticky, like those little silly hands that you can throw and hit your siblings with. And it sticks to them, and then you get yelled at by your mom. Just not speaking from experience or anything, but that clay, those really, really small particles are going to hold water tighter than these other 2 particle sizes. And because of that, sometimes that water may not actually, those chemical bonds, those bonds may not be able to be broken, and that water may not even be available to a plant. And so you may have plants wilting due to lack of water uptake, right? But there still might be water in the soil. It's not going to be completely dry. It's just being held so tightly by those clay particles that it is not available to the plants. Okay. So this is what we call a soil triangle. And if you notice, we have sand, silt, and clay on each side going in different directions, and we have all these colors and numbers and things. It can look real confusing, but it's actually a very helpful tool to determine what type of soil that you have. And so there is 12 different soil types. So whether you are in Paris, France, or you're in Claremore, Oklahoma, or in, I guess, I don't know, those are pretty far apart, I guess, right? Or somewhere in the Middle East, right? You're going to have one of these different types of soil, right? So whether it is heavy clay, 100% sand, 100% silt, or somewhere in the middle, you're going to fall into one of these different categories, okay? These numbers on the side represent the different percentages of each of these different particle sizes. And so how this works is you basically kind of draw imaginary lines with your finger. This one's great because it's colorful and the lines are easy to see, at least on my end. There's some you could Google that might have more lines on them that you can kind of get down into exact percentages. But there's actually a good one, New South Wales in Australia. They have a really good soil, they have a lot of resources for people to learn about soil, and they have a really good soil triangle. You can Google it, and that's another chasing a squirrel there. But so how this works is you're going to take your percentage of 2 of these trace the lines wherever they meet. That's what type of soil you have. So if we have something that is, let's say, 30% sand, okay, and 40% silt, if we follow those lines right where they meet, okay, we're going to be at clay loam. Excuse me. We're going to be at clay loam, so that would be our soil type based upon those percentages of the other two. And you can check you can kind of check your work by, if you take these two, right, where they meet, and then you go over to the third side, all three of those numbers should equal 100%, right? Because it's a percentage. So if you end up with like 80 or something, then you did it wrong. Okay. As you look on here, you might see the LOAM. It's not the band that put out Party Rock. It's a soil definition. But anyways, what loam means is that it is a relatively even mixture of all three of those, give or take 0 to 25 percentage points. So if we are at clay loam, right, to use the example we just did, we were 30, 40, right, and 30. So we're roughly the same percentages of each individual particle size. Okay. So to give another example, if we have a soil that is 20% clay and 15% sand, right? Well, you can say, oh, well, there's not a 15 on here. So we can just kind of guess right here in between 10 and 20. Okay, we're going to follow our lines down, and we'll be right there in sandy, in the sandy loam. And so if you see sandy, or if you see silt or clay in front of loam, then that usually means that that particular soil is going to be higher in the clay particle size, or it's going to have a lot more clay or silt or sand than maybe some of the others might. Okay, so there's two different ways to be able to test at home what type of soil you have. There is soil ribboning that hopefully we have time to get to because I was rambling a little bit, but there's also a real easy method that you can use, and all you need is a bucket of soil and a jar, right? So you're basically, you'd be like Jack Sparrow, you can have a jar of dirt. Sorry for the movie references there. So all you're going to do is you're going to fill it up about halfway full of water, okay? You're going to try not to make a mess with whatever it is you're doing. And you want to try to get a bunch of soil that is free of roots and small rocks and debris, leaves, those sorts of things. And what you're going to do is you're going to put that into the jar without trying to make a huge mess on Miss Helbig's table here. But no promises. So just put your lid on tight, but if at home, if you have some borax, which is basically like a detergent booster, you can take a specially custom designed spoon that you stole from Mr. Harshfield's room that has a nice little bend in it, and you can take about half of a spoonful of the borax. You can put that in there, and what that's going to help basically those particles fall out of the water faster. And that is exactly what we are looking at with the setup. And so once all the soil and water and the borax is in there, you're going to shake it for about 5 to 7 to 10 to however long you want to do this till you get bored and stop. This is a great thing if you have like a little brother or sister. You can be like, here, shake this for 10 minutes. And so what will happen is, as that soil breaks apart and mixes with the water, the heavier pieces are going to fall out first. And so you may think, well, how do I know which piece is going to be heavier or more dense, right? Well, if we think back to our sand, silt, and clay, sand was the biggest, so it's going to fall out first, followed then by your silt and then your clay. Your sand is going to fall out within the first minute and a half to 2 minutes, your silt 30 to 45 minutes, and then after a couple of days, you're going to have a thin layer of clay form on the jar. Chris, can you see that very well, or should I bring it closer to the camera? And so about right there. Is that good? Okay. And so what will happen is we have these distinct layers that will form. So this top real kind of tan layer, that's going to be our clay. Okay. from that line down to where the texture kind of changes again, that's going to be our silt, and then our sand is going to be on the bottom. And so what we can do is we can take a little ruler, okay, and we can measure our total height, and then we can measure the height of each individual component, or particle size rather, and then we can make a rough estimation of the type of soil that we have. Okay, and so I took the measurements on that. We had 150 millimeters of sand, 370 of silt, and we had 60 milliliters of clay. And so that ends up being about 25% sand, 65% silt, and a 11% clay. And I used some rounding. We actually ended up with like 99 point something math. You know, it's tough. Especially for an ag teacher. Anyways, so now if we go to our soil triangle after we looked one of these up on the internet, okay, we are going to be 25% sand, so that's going to be right here between 20 and 30, and then we're going to be 65% silt. So if we take those, right, and we follow those lines, we're going to be right here at a clay loam. And so that makes sense. I live kind of on a flat spot in between kind of two rivers that has 100-year flooding all the time. So it makes sense that we have more silt washed up there and sand and those types of things. So at the Hasek Hacienda, we have a clay loam soil, right? And so what I would encourage you guys to do is do this at home and just kind of see what type of soil you have. My guess is, I don't know if I should say this or not, but most of you guys are probably going to be in this general vicinity. If you are maybe more north and west of town, you might be kind of somewhere over here. But for the most part, you're going to be in that region. Okay. Now, granted, this isn't exact. If we wanted to be more scientific, right, we could get graduated cylinders and distilled water and do all these more specific methods of calculating our percentages. But for at home, if you don't have a jar, have spaghetti one night, save the pasta sauce, right? That'll work about perfect. Okay. But that's so the other way is called soil ribboning. Okay. And how that works, this is a little more messy, so it might be a little more fun. So I'm going to take another soil sample. Again, I'm going to try to get as free of rocks, roots, leaves, small mammals, whatever it might be. I'm just going to take a little handful of soil. Okay, and I'm going to take our handy dandy spray bottle. I'm just going to kind of wet it down gradually. Okay, and I'm going to work it back and forth just like if I was making a bread dough. Okay, and as this happens, I can start to feel little rocks and things, and I'm going to push those out. Okay, and then I'm just going to kind of add some water, and basically I want it to not drop it back in the bucket. That's what I don't want to do. Okay, I'm going to work it until I have a ball that feels kind of sticky, but it's not dripping wet, free of that material, which is harder than you think. Okay, and I'm going to take it between my pointer finger and my thumb, and I'm just going to kind of depress, okay, real light, and push forward. And so what you'll end up with is a little piece of soil that is kind of stuck together, and my soil is actually a little bit dry. Okay, so I'm going to add just a little bit more water. If you try to do this and you're adding water and it's just falling apart and it's not forming a ball, then you probably have a handful of sand, which should be apparent whenever you picked it up. Yeah, it should feel just like sand. And so as I push this ribbon forward, okay, a piece is going to fall off. Okay, I can then take my handy dandy ruler again, and I can see, okay, we're at about 3 centimeters or 30 millimeters, or we're at about, for your standard measurement, you're going to be at about an inch. We should have switched to the metric system, but that's neither here nor there. That's just like a sciencey thing. But anyways, we can then take that ribbon, that soil ribbon, and we can compare it to some different charts you can find online. And depending on the length of that, will determine our sand, silt, and clay percentage. It's not as precise because there's a lot of factors. Do you have extra water? Do you have did you push with the right firmness? Are you doing your part? So there's some room for human error, but you can do that in the field. All you need is a little bit of water. Just go out, grab you some soil, and make you a ball. Okay, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, sudden emotional outbursts, feel free to, you can send me an email, owen.hosick@sequoiaeagles.net. Thank you for your time. Hope everybody out there is staying safe and not losing their mind by sitting at home like I have. So anyways. So they're going to be, you're going to be in your loam to silty clay loam to silt loam. So they're going to be real. It's going to be a pretty even mixture. The main difference is they're going to be high in organic matter, right? Which is what makes it so fertile, which is why they can grow crops so efficiently as opposed to other places. Okay, thank you.
Good morning, and welcome to the middle school science class today. My name is Mr. Paul, and I will be your teacher. I hope you had the opportunity to watch all the amazing lessons that were presented before me. But we're going to shift gears just a little bit, and we're going to move into some science and explore some hands-on experiments that you can do at home. So the very first thing that we're going to do today is we're going to use 3 cups, some water, 3 eggs, and some table salt. So the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to pour water in 3 cups, and you want to make sure they're equal. Now, I'm using 3/4 of a cup of water for each cup. Now, I've already marked my lines to make it a little bit easier today so that I don't have to focus on making sure that it's the exact same amount. Okay. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to put some table salt into each cup. Now, I've already got mine measured out to make it easier today. There's 3 tablespoons of salt per cup. So I want to put it in the second and third cup. Now, I'm just using table salt. You can use any type of salt you want. Just make sure you're not using all your mama's Himalayan salt. She might get upset. Now, we're going to mix the salt in cups 2 and 3, and it's going to form a mixture. So, one of the first things I always do in an experiment is we want to look and see if we can notice anything that's changing before we start. Now, as you notice, in cups 1, it's very clear. Nice, clean drinking water. Something I'd want to drink. Now, cups 2 and 3, a little bit murky. Not something I'd probably want to drink. Just a little observation to start with. Now, we're going to use 3 eggs. It doesn't matter the style, just 3 eggs that are the exact same. I have jumbo to start with today. And we're going to place the eggs into each cup. Well, wait, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think the egg is going to sink to the bottom? Do you think it's going to float at the top of the surface water? Not sure. Do you think it's going to stay in the middle? Or do you think a chicken is going to pop out of it? We'll have to find out. So, let's place an egg into each one. We notice in the very first cup with just water, the egg sinks all the way to the bottom. Okay. So now we're going to put an egg into the second cup with salt water. It didn't do the exact same thing as the first cup. It floated back to the top. Wonder why that is. So we notice that in cup 2 with the salt water, the egg floats instead of sinking. Let's go ahead and put the egg into the third cup. Makes sense. It does the exact same as the second cup. Has the same amount of water, same amount of salt. So what's going on here? What makes it different? Yes, you in the back. Perfect. Salt. Yes, obviously. But what is salt doing to the water to make it different from the first one? That's the question. Let's do one more thing before we move on to see if we can figure out why. We're going to manipulate the last cup just a little bit. We're going to pour some some extra water into it. Let's see what happens to the egg when we pour water in. Okay, it's changed. But now the only thing we've changed is by adding extra water. So now the egg is floating in the middle. It hasn't sank all the way to the bottom, and it's not at the surface level. Again, why is this? Well, let's find out. We're going to move it into our PowerPoint. There's my clicker. And we're going to talk about density. Density what now? Sorry. Pretty lame science joke, I understand. Now, you probably couldn't hear the sound effects, but it's probably the worst sound that any science teacher wants to hear in a room. Sound of glass breaking. So remember, don't break the beakers or your mom's glass while you're doing this. So the first thing that I always talk about with my kids, that I always start the beginning of the year off with, is solids, liquids, and gases. Yes, we all know what solids, liquids, and gases are, but I want to focus on the particles that are in each one. So the particles in the box right here with the solid, you're going to notice that they're more compact. They don't move as much. They actually don't even pass each other. They vibrate. The one you don't see is a liquid. So the liquid has a little bit difference in variation. The liquid's particles are allowed to slip over each other and move around in the form and shape of whatever the liquid's in. And the gas, on the other hand, is allowed to freely move around in whatever container that it's holding it. So the particles are not compact at all, whereas the solids are very compact. Now, many factors change this. The density of the object, different materials have different weights and different amounts of matter. In saying that, temperature also affects this. So if you're doing an experiment and your experiment was done with one with warmer water compared to cold water, the particles are going to move differently. The higher the temperature, the faster the particles are going to move. The lower the temperature, the slower they'll move. Is this related to density? Yes, sort of. And the reason is density is how much matter there is given in an object. And this can be different depending on the matter. For example, if you have 2 cups, one filled with water and one filled with clay with the exact same amounts, you would obviously think the clay one's going to be heavier, right? Yes, because clay is a solid and has more mass and a greater density because the particles are compact within it. So the clay cup is going to be much heavier than the water. Now, again, just like with everything, this is the usual rule. There are exceptions to it. So generally speaking, we have solids that are the most dense, liquids are in between with medium density, and gases have the least amount of density. Now, like I said, there are exceptions to this rule. Think about wood. I know especially out here in the country, a lot of kids like to go to lakes and ponds and throw stones in the water and they sink. But sometimes they throw sticks in the water, and when that stick, what happens? It floats. Why is that? Well, the log plays a different role in this. Why? Because the particles in wood are a little bit different than normal solids because they have air pockets inside the wood that makes them less dense. As you can read right here, the clusters of particles in the pockets of air cause it to change the overall density. So wood is actually a composite of solid and gas. So the particles are a little bit different, and they do a little bit different things. So density and buoyancy. Pretty simple. If it's too heavy, whatever substance it's in, it's going to sink. If it's lighter than density, it's going to float. So if an object's substance is less dense, it floats. If the substance that it's in is heavier, it sinks. So we're going to try this. Get 2 buckets of water, 1 can of Diet Coke, and 1 can of regular Coke. I'm going to use 1 bucket because it's going to be easier for you guys to see. And we're going to use 3 sodas. We're going to use Diet Coke, we're going to use Sprite, and we're going to use regular Coke. But before we do this, what do you think is going to happen? Just like the egg. Do you think they're all going to sink? Do you think they're going to float? Or sit in the middle? Let's find out. Let's put the Diet Coke in first because no one really likes Diet Coke anyways. Okay, so it's hard to tell, but the Diet Coke is floating. It's not very deep, but you can see that it's floating at the surface of the water. Now Sprite, which is one of my kids' favorite drinks, no caffeine. It floats a little bit, and then it starts to sink at the bottom. That's weird. They have the same amount of volume. They're both 12-ounce drinks. They're both in aluminum cans. I wonder what the difference is. Let's try the Coke now. Now, by the way, I had a few problems with Coke earlier in the day. It wanted to float for some odd reason, but I think my temperature of my water was a little warm. But in this situation, the Coke sinks to the bottom also. Again, all 3 cans are the exact same volume. All of them have 12 ounces of fluid. All of them are in aluminum cans. So what is the difference? The amount of sugar in each can is the difference. The Coke can have a much larger content of sugar, making it more dense than the Coke. So obviously, as my PowerPoint says, we're going to spoil it for you. The Diet Coke will float to the top because it has sugar, whereas the Sprite and Coke is going to sink to the bottom because the density level in the volume makes it more dense. The amount of sugar changes everything. So, can a substance become more or less dense? This goes back to experiment number 1 with the eggs. What changes everything right here? Well, the first one we had just water in the first cup, and then in the second cup and third cup we had the same amount of salt. And they had the same amount of density until we decided to put more water into the third cup. And when we put more water into the third cup, it changed the density level. That is the factor here. So yes, we can change the density. Now, if I added more salt back into the third cup, the density level would increase more, and the egg would start to float back to the surface. So, simple answer, whatever's in it matters. Matter matters. So, this is a good representation of extra particles that we're putting in. More amounts of salt, more particles, more density. More density added will increase the volume of the water. So, here's a little last little science thing. Density got you down? Don't be sad or intimidated. We love density. After all, density is the reason you are floating up and hitting your head on the ceiling. Woo, for density. Okay, so we're going to have one more experiment before we end the day, and we're going to move to the back of the classroom, which is perfect because this will be just like your kitchen sink in your mom's kitchen, working with what you have in there. So this very last experiment, we're going to use some household utensils that you have. Different combinations of mixtures that you can use at home too. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to use honey, corn syrup, butter syrup, or maple syrup. It's the same thing. Whole milk, any kind of dish soap, which is Ajax for here. Then we have oil, alcohol, and lamp oil. So we have 8 different things that we're going to put into this jar. And we're going to check the density levels of each. Now, it's very important that when you do a project like this that you understand the density levels. There's 2 ways of doing this. First, like most people, you can Google and see what the density rate is. Or you can check the back of the labels. Now, if I check the back of the label on the honey, it has 60 carbs and a large amount of sugar. The corn syrup, on the other hand, has 31 grams, which is less dense than the honey. So I'm going to start out with the honey. Now, unfortunately, the ants have decided they like the honey too, and they're trying to get into part of this experiment. So what we're going to do is we're going to level off each one. I have already filled each of my first 3 because they are really hard to get out of the container and it takes a large amount of time. But I have a half cup of syrup, a half cup of corn syrup, maple syrup, and then I'm going to do milk next. So we're going to start with honey. When you're putting it into your container, you want to make sure that you're not touching the walls, because if you do, it's going to cause it to mix later on, because again, honey is much more dense than some of my other materials up here. And again, this takes some time. Obviously. Okay, so we're going to leave just a little bit in there because it's going to take a while. So the next thing is we're going to do corn syrup. Again, take your time, make sure you go right in the middle and dump it in nice and slow. Now at first you're going to notice that the corn syrup goes directly in the middle of the honey and pushes down. But after a few seconds, you're going to notice that the corn syrup starts to rise back to the top because the density rate of honey is more than the corn syrup. So again, we've already got 2 nice little levels here. We have the dark honey on the bottom, and then we have the corn syrup right above it. Now, this is the first layer. Now we're going to go to our next one. We're going to put in our butter-flavored syrup, which hopefully you used on your pancakes this morning. Now again, notice the same trend. As I pour it in, the syrup pushes down in the other corn syrup and into the honey, but eventually rises back to the top. Now, same thing. Now we have 3 distinct layers. Really easy to tell which one the honey is, which one the corn syrup, and which one the maple syrup is. All right. Now we have to change it up a little bit. So I'm going to use the milk next. Now, I'm not going to lie, this took a few times. Make sure that if you're going to experiment with it, you keep your milk cold or do room temperature, because if you change the variations of your experiment, the particles will change also. So, what you're going to need for this one is one of these bad boys. We're going to suck up the milk slowly. And then it's important that we change the method on this one. we don't want to pour it directly in the middle like we did the other one. We're going to have to pour it on the side and let it slowly make its way in the container. Now, I tried this a few times, and if you don't do it this method and you dump it right in the middle, the mixtures will start to mix, especially when we get to the dish soap. Now again, make sure you're doing this in the kitchen with some parental help so you don't make a mess and your mom comes home to this. Okay, so after that, what you need to do is make sure that you wash out your utensil, because if not, you're going to have some milk bubbles in a second, and that's not going to be very helpful for this. So the next material to pour in is Ajax dish soap. Again, this one's slow too and takes some time. And if you don't take your time on this one, this is where your tower will start messing up. Because like I said, they will slowly start mixing as I drop some right in the middle. Man, this is the quietest my class has ever been. Only if this was like it was when you're doing experiments in the classroom. No, I'm just kidding. I really like the noise. If you've ever been in one of my classrooms, I probably make my other teachers a little upset because we're pretty noisy sometimes. Part of learning is interacting and talking with your fellow classmates. So, I told you this will take a little minute. Got it nice and slow. If you rush this part, your tower will start to become a milky Ajax mess. And we don't want that. Yes, question in the back. Yes, I am out of dress code. Sorry, I am wearing a hat today. Why is that? Well, let's see. With everything that's going on, our barber's been closed for the last couple of weeks, and my hair is a mess. I feel like I'm like one of my other students in my classroom, and I have to have a ponytail holder to hold my hair up. So we're gonna avoid that one. Yes, that is true. Lou, you know who I'm talking about. We'll use your nickname so no one knows. Again, this is a lengthy process, but has some amazing sounds to go with it if you want to take your time and do it. Now, my son found it more funny to do this part than the rest because all the fart sounds that it made with it. But you know, we'll be all right. That's right. Okay, so one last little syringe of this, and then we'll move on to the oil process. Like I said, it takes just a little bit of time. All right, again, so after the first couple times I did this, I didn't wash this out very well. In saying that, if you do not take your time to wash it out between each part, the soap will mess up the rest of the experiment. Now, the great thing is everyone should have a lot of soap with everything that's going on now, washing your hands constantly. So, try not to make too big of a mess here. The next thing is we're going to put some oil in. Again, I already have these pre-measured out with lines to make it easier, but I am using half a cup for each substance. Just like with the eggs that we did earlier, we want to make sure we're using the exact same amount to make this look good and work out properly. Now we're going to have to do the same thing that we did with the Ajax in the milk. You have to take this step slowly because the density rate between each one of these is slight. They vary by just a little amount. So if you rush these, what's going to happen is they're going to slowly start to mix. And I promise you that if you're doing this with a parent, they're not going to want to do this too many times if you're wasting a whole bunch of household materials. Again, see, I didn't clean it out very well, and now I'm starting to get some soap at the top level. All right. That one went a lot faster than the first one. This is going to be our last time that we have to rinse this out, because the great thing about alcohol is it will help get rid of everything else that's in this. So our next one is some rubbing alcohol. Any, as long as it's rubbing alcohol. This one's 91 proof. Anything I believe above 70%. Anything below that, that becomes a little bit subjective to the oil below it. And if it gets too high of 100%, it's going to start messing with the lamp oil. So anywhere from 71 to 95%, which most of the time when you buy rubbing alcohol in your store, it's going to be around 91%. So before we go into that, we're going to put some food coloring into it. Why? 4 minutes? I got to speed it up. That's what I'm being told. So we're just going to skip the food coloring then. Now I'm going to try to speed through these last two so that we can get to a few more things to go with this, because even though we're doing a density tower, we're going to do an experiment with it too. We're going to check the density rate of other objects by dropping them in as soon as we are done with this tower. Now typically I would add some food coloring into the last couple levels to show the differences, especially if they're both clear liquids. It's going to start getting hard to tell which is which. There will be a slight difference in coloration between the lamp oil and the alcohol, even though they're pretty clear. All right, so that step's done. Now we have an 8-level density tower, starting with the honey at the very bottom being the most dense liquid that we have in here. And at the very top, we have lamp oil. And if you notice, there's pretty variations between each one. Now again, if you notice, the darker liquids are at the bottom. Obviously, the Ajax is in the middle with a little bit of food coloring in it that they've already pre-mixed. But everything else, the dark liquids are at the bottom. They're more dense. The honey is at the bottom, the syrup, and the corn syrup. So before we end, we're going to drop a few things in here, just different objects to see where they land. Now, I'm going to start with the screw. This one's probably the most obvious. You're probably going to say it's going to land at the bottom, right? That's what I would do because it's metal. So let's drop it in. Let's see where it lands. Again, it dropped all the way to the syrup, right? All the way down to the honey level. So the next one is we're going to drop a popcorn kernel. Where do you think it's going to land? Let's wait and find out. Now, if you notice, it should have stopped anywhere between the milk and the Ajax level. Shouldn't have gone much further than that. The syrup is too thick for it to go down. Let's do a cherry tomato. I know it's growing season. Let's get those gardens going. Again, that one should stay above the syrup level also. I know it's kind of hard to see. It's in the Ajax. Perfect. Last one, we have macaroni and cheese noodle. I know you guys love them. It's one of my daughter's favorite lunch materials. So here we go. Where'd it go? Can you see it? Okay, so that one should have actually landed right in the material right above the Ajax. The last one's ping pong balls. I know you guys have them. I'm going to skate these all the way at a time. Where do you think it's going to go? It's going to float, right? Right at the top. We're going to put some chocolate in last. You know, got to throw some chocolate in. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to eat this one. In saying that, I hope you guys have enjoyed the experiments today. Thursday, RSU TV will be on again with some Sequoyah teachers. And next Tuesday, I will be on again. I hope to see you there. Thank you.